So today we are continuing with our course of the First World War. I think we've moved quite a bit. I think we are halfway done too. We exhausted the alliance system. We moved on to the Moroccan crisis. We moved on to the Bosnian crisis. Now we are going to do another course called militarism. So militarism is the broad term. Militarism encompasses what we call arms and what? And naval race. That's the course that we're going to move into and how it contributed to the war. Right. So what is militarism? Before we get into the arms and naval race, I think I said that militarism is an umbrella term. The arms and naval race are part of militarism. Right. So what is militarism? Militarism in this context was an increase in soldiers by the European powers. I want you to take note of that. From the point at our you find out that the European powers were teasing each other, like they were insulting each other or quarreling. So the only thing that was left was to fight. You know, some wars were avoided. I think we once mentioned about the Bosnian crisis. Serbia didn't engage into that war, and so was Russia too. Because they were not prepared. So each country which wasn't prepared began to what? To prepare. You get this? That's militarism. That's arms and naval race. So it was an increase in soldiers by European powers. From the end of the 19th century, most European powers had been increasing their arms. They began to introduce what we call compulsory military service. Compulsory military service. Yelena, what do you understand by the word compulsory?
It means it's not negotiable.
Yes, like they were now forcing everyone to be a soldier, gearing towards the war. So all able-bodied men were forced to join the army. France, for example, went on to increase military service from 2 to 3 years. We also had like Russia from 3 to 3.5 years. Germany increased their soldiers up to 5 million. That's a lot. Ukaona mnyika mwenye masoja 5 million. In other words, mwenye wese msoja. Because masoja mwenye mzimbabwe afike 100,000. Ukaona mnyika mchinzi lese mwenye mtiniwa 60 million. Then to masoja 500,000. That's a high risk. That's a serious security situation. Masoja are found why? Because they are, in most cases, they are skilled people. Why should we have so much skilled people? It's not good. But in Germany, they had about 5 million soldiers in preparation for it. Right? And even various war plans were what? Were drawn. For example, we'll touch on it later. It's called what? The Schifflen Plan. Right? Yes. Schifflen Plan, if I'm not mistaken, was drafted in 1905. The war broke out in 1914. So, coming up with a plan for war, or coming up with a plan in which showed how they were supposed to execute the war, proves that they really wanted to fight. You guys are getting some German. That's told me like Chidoka or that age to fight to an extent of forming war plans like the Schifflen Plan. And railway lines were even constructed, new roads were even constructed to reach possible battlefields, right? So how did it cause to the World War? The armies were not to remain idle. Yes. There was no way they were going to recruit the soldiers for fun. Prospects were so high that they were going to be used in a war situation. You get the sense? There's no way you can keep 5,000 soldiers just for fun. That's why you find out that when the war broke out in 1914, within a month, the war world was in flames. Why? Because before 1914, most of the countries had been building ammunitions, had been adding a lot of soldiers, That's militarism. So it became easy for the war to be fought because there was grand preparation for the war. That's militarism. So let's get down to the arms race. What do you understand by the word arms? In simple English. Simple English. What are arms? Arms. Claire?
I think it's a group of people.
Arms. Come on, guys. Yes.
I think weapons or something.
Yes. Arms, in short, very good, Mapisa. It's what? It's weapons. Futima, bomba, chichi, racing. They are part of the arms. So the countries will now engage in what we call an arms race. That's a competition in preparation for war. So what is arms race? It was the competition in the production of armaments. So arms can also be referred to as what? Armaments. So it was the competition in the production of what? Of armaments. And during the period after 1870, Germany had the finest military machine, yet she continued to arm. Right? Germany continued to what? To arm. She said to had the greatest or the best military machine, but she kept on arming herself. And France and Russia looked upon Germany's own might, arming with fear, and began to arm. So they increased the arms to counter Germany's military machine. So Germany, while Germany was continuing to arm, her enemies also what? Followed suit. You know. So almost all European countries embarked on making weapons in order to fully equip their armies. Ammunition firms mushroomed all over Europe. They mushroomed all over Europe. You know mushroom? So the ammunition firms mushroomed. You know, that's how serious they were. So attempts to limit armaments had failed at the Hague Conference. So Hague Conference, that was in you have to take note of that. 1899. The Hague Conference in 1899 tried to advise the countries not to arm because they had already seen that the war would be plunged into a deadly or lethal war. But they didn't listen. They turned their backs and they kept on arming. So Tsar Nicholas II of what? Of Russia had suggested a 5-year hold in arms increases, but no positive proposal of that kind was accepted. And the main country which was leading the rejection was what? Was Germany. Germany was even motivating other countries to arm. Like Germany got to swing one to beat the world. You know. So each announcement of increased armament expenditure by European power was viewed as a threat by its perceived rival, and this created an atmosphere of mutual fear and suspicion, which played a major part in creating the mood of war in 1940. So zvaiitika mainzi vapa news kuti yes, Germany military ministry yatenga zvombo $10 million. Ndizvo. Then Britain here Germany gayoti mangwanonzwa tayo Britain yatenga 15 million. So that was the competition. So once it started, it became like a drug. It became like a habit, right? Once it started, it was difficult or impossible to slow down. And on each side, there was complete lack of trust in their intentions. So the European powers kept on piling their arms. They kept on piling the arms. Yes. And it became easy for the war to break out. Why? Because the countries already had the arms. So arms race like increased insecurity among nations. Why? If your enemy is arming yourself, you feel insecure, right? You also go and arm yourself. Because you'll be fearing that she might attack you at any time, right? So you must be also ready to defend yourself or to attack too. Because they usually say the best way to defend is also to attack, right? Yes. So let us look at the words, at naval race. Naval race. The word naval is from the word navy. Troy, what do you understand by the word navy? What navy?
Water.
Yes, navy is something to do with the warships in the water. So the naval race was mainly dominated by two countries. Which two countries were in the naval race? It was what? Britain and what? Yes, Britain and Germany. Remember we once talked about Britain being the what? Britain was called what? The mistress of the seas, right? She controlled all the seas. She had vast colonies throughout the world. Which means when you talk about the powers in the waters, Britain was out of this world. She possessed what they still call the British Royal Navy. It's one of the best navies even up to this day. You get the sense? So that's one of the reasons why Britain also left that policy of splendid isolation. She left it because her hegemony or her authority or her leadership as the best naval power was being challenged by what? By Germany. Yes. So it was the competition of building warships, especially between Britain and what? And Germany. So in 1870, Germany passed naval laws aimed at the construction of big warships. Like Britain, who considered herself as the mistress of the seas, felt threatened. Britain felt threatened. Because those naval laws meant that Germany was now entering into Britain's territory. Meant that Germany was now ready to challenge Britain. So that was in 1889. Britain said, okay, Germany, you want to challenge me? Then I would like to show to the world that I can make a navy which is stronger than that of two countries combined. What she said was, if two countries could meet or could combine their navies, they will never beat mine. That was the point. So after 1890, Germany challenged this view and began competing with Britain and passed more naval laws aimed at speeding up ship production. Between 1898 and 1900, Germany doubled her warships. She had 31 only. Then, if she doubled, it means 31 times 2. So she now had what? 62 warships. Right. So Britain felt threatened. Then she launched a ship called the what? The Dreadnought. Dread means fear, right? Not means zero, right? So Britain made up that ship and named it Fear Not or Dreadnought, which means she was not fearing that Germany had doubled the warships from 31 to 62. She was also telling everyone that she fears no one when it comes to the seas. She is the mistress of the seas forever. So the type of ship dominated the seas during the World War. This put Germany at a disadvantage because the Dreadnought, it was the first of its kind, right? And yakabaitwa to maship twese twaturipo tutoka tumshikashika utatupoto kuti hapana zvituzvi. Like this rendered other ships virtually useless. Germany, not wanting to outcompete it, made her own Dreadnought in 1909. Germany made her own warship in 1909. Right. Okay, no problem. So between 1909 and 1912, Germany had a popular and built 9 dreadnoughts, whilst Britain consequently laid down 18 to maintain its supremacy. The naval race, it even reached its peak in 1906 with the launching of the dreadnought by Britain. Right. So by 1914, when the war broke out, Britain had built 32 dreadnoughts, while Germany only had 20. So the naval race increased the tension and the temptation of using those navy pieces, which subsequently led to the outbreak of the war. So together with militarism, naval race, right, the system of alliances, all those factors, all those aspects brought Europe nearer to war than to peace. So next lesson, we'll look into the Balkan Wars. But let me close by saying the militarism arms and naval race contributed to the World War. Why? Because the accumulation of weaponry, right, raised the temptation of using them. Listen, you've heard about high gun violence in America or in some parts of South Africa. The reason why you are not sure it is because of poor or weak gun laws, like easy accessibility of firearms. Because when you go food all the time, right? Kungomudena zingazwisisi panotofa vanhu. Have you heard about it? Pane nyaya dzandona dzemakotsi kuna America. Zvizoti munhu auraya mukadzi wake nevana 2. Awabaya nefuti. So we go back to the possession. Why was he possessing the gun? So whenever you own a deadly weapon, chances are so high that you are about to use it. Because we are humans. It's like me personally, I don't even like the gun. Like, I don't like it at all. I don't like it. Owning a gun, not at all. I don't like it. Not because I shot too much, but I just don't feel like I feel owning a gun. But once you own a gun, like there's a lot of gun violence. There's these massacres which happened in should be in America, right? At Columbine High School, they call them the Columbine massacres. I think they were, I don't know the number of people who were killed and were injured, but there were some students, like teenagers, should be 17 or 18 years, who started to open fire in a library or something. Yes. Like they were inspired by video games, and they also wanted to retaliate because of how they were bullied. For a shungula no innocent. Rita Futi, Pakafiwa, big time. It was a quiet school that day. So I'm trying to explain how owning weapons, right, can easily lead one to engage in violent crimes. You know, that was the thing when it comes to the militarism in arms and affairs. The countries and the soldiers, the countries and the weapons, the countries and the dreadnoughts, the countries and the arms, the countries and the guns. So what was left was just to use them. That's how it went to the war. So we'll look into the Balkan Wars next lesson.